The strangest conversation I've ever had lasted less than 10 seconds. It happened on a Wednesday. Nothing special about the day. I stopped at a grocery store after work because Emily had texted me a short list. Milk. Pasta. Coffee. The usual. I was standing in line behind an older man wearing a navy windbreaker. He looked to be in his 60s, maybe older. Gray hair, wire-frame glasses, the kind of face you forget 5 minutes after seeing it. He paid for his groceries. The cashier handed him his receipt. He started walking toward the exit. Then he stopped. He turned around, looked directly at me, not past me, at me. He took a few steps back until he was standing beside my cart. "Excuse me." His voice was polite. "Are you Emily Carter's husband?" I blinked. "Yeah." "You know my wife?" A small smile spread across his face, the kind people wear when they're genuinely relieved. He held out his hand. "I've wanted to meet you for a long time." I shook it without thinking. Then he said something that made absolutely no sense. "Thank you for letting your wife go." I frowned. "I'm sorry." He hesitated, like he suddenly realized how that sounded. His smile disappeared. "You don't know?" "Know what?" He looked over my shoulder, then back at me. "I thought she would have told you by now." "Told me what?" For a second I thought he was going to explain. Instead, he simply nodded to himself. "I shouldn't have said anything." Then he walked away. I didn't even notice the cashier talking to me. "Sir?" I looked up. "Your total?" "Oh, sorry." I paid, grabbed the bags and walked outside. The old man was gone. No car. No sign of him. Just gone. The drive home was only 12 minutes. The whole way, I replayed the conversation in my head. "Thank you for letting your wife go." Go where? Business trips? Volunteer work? Another relationship? None of it made sense. If he knew Emily, why had I never heard his name? Emily was making dinner when I got home. She was standing at the stove, stirring pasta sauce with one hand while reading something on her phone with the other. She smiled when I walked in. "Did you remember the coffee?" I held up the bag. "Barely." She laughed. "I would have survived." I put the groceries on the counter. For a minute we talked about completely normal things. Her day. My day. Whether Noah had remembered his homework. Then I asked as casually as I could, "Do you know a man named Richard?" The wooden spoon stopped moving. Not dramatically. Just stopped. She looked up. "Richard?" "Yeah." "Why?" "I met him today." "I don't know a Richard." "You sure?" She nodded. "I don't think I've ever met anyone named Richard." Something about that answer bothered me. Not because she answered too quickly. Because she asked the wrong question. She hadn't asked, "Where did you meet him?" Or, "What did he want?" Just, "Why?" I opened the fridge, pretending to put away the milk. He said something strange. "What?" I looked at her. "He thanked me. For letting you go." The spoon slipped out of her hand. It hit the floor with a loud clatter. Neither of us moved. Emily stared at me. "Exactly those words?" "Yeah." She slowly bent down, picked up the spoon, rinsed it under the tap. She kept her back turned toward me. "That's a weird thing to say. Do you know what he meant?" "No." She was lying. I didn't know how. I didn't know about what. But after 12 years together, I knew exactly what her voice sounded like when she wasn't telling me everything. That night, she fell asleep almost immediately. I didn't. Around midnight, I got out of bed to get some water. As I walked past the living room, I heard her phone vibrate on the coffee table. The screen lit up. One new message. I wasn't trying to snoop. I just happened to glance at the screen. One sentence. No name. Just a number. "He spoke to your husband today." Before I could read anything else, the screen went black. I stood there for a long moment, then quietly went back upstairs. The next morning, Emily acted completely normal. She packed Noah's lunch, kissed me goodbye, asked if I'd be home by 6, like nothing had happened. I almost convinced myself to let it go, until my phone rang just after lunch. Unknown number. I answered. A familiar voice said, "Mr. Carter?" It was the man from the grocery store. "I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have approached you yesterday." I leaned back in my chair. "I think you owe me more than that." There was a long pause. Then he quietly said, "You're right. I do. But I'd rather tell you in person." I almost didn't go. On my drive over, I kept telling myself this was ridiculous. A stranger says one weird sentence in a grocery store, and suddenly I'm rearranging my afternoon to meet him? It sounded insane. Still, at exactly 4 o'clock, I pulled into the parking lot of a small diner on the edge of town. The place looked like it hadn't changed since the 90s. Old booths. Coffee stains on the windows. A flickering neon open sign. Richard was already there. He stood when he saw me. "I'm glad you came." "I almost didn't. I wouldn't have blamed you." He gestured toward the booth across from him. "I'll buy you a coffee." "I'm not here for coffee." "I know." The waitress poured 2 cups anyway. Neither of us touched them. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Richard was the first to break the silence. "I've been rehearsing this conversation in my head for years." "Years?" He nodded. "I just never expected to have it like this." I leaned forward. "Start with one thing. How do you know my wife?" He looked down at the table. "Emily doesn't know me." That answer irritated me immediately. "Yesterday you acted like you knew her." "I know who she is." "That's different." "So you've never spoken to her?" "Oh, I have. Once. Maybe twice. Very briefly." None of this made any sense. "Then why thank me?" He looked out the window for a moment before answering. 8 years ago, my daughter almost died." I didn't interrupt. He continued. "She was 21, driving home from college. A drunk driver crossed the center line. There it was. The first real piece of information. My daughter survived. Barely. She spent almost 3 weeks in intensive care." "I'm sorry." He nodded. "So was I." He smiled faintly. "Sorry doesn't fix much." "I still don't understand what this has to do with Emily." "It has everything to do with Emily." "How?" He looked at me. "She was there." I frowned. "At the hospital?" "No. At the crash." That made me sit back. "What?" "Emily was the first person who stopped." I stared at him. "No. She would have told me." "I thought so too." He sighed. "That's why yesterday surprised me." Richard reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. For a second I wondered if he was pulling out a photograph. Instead, he unfolded an old newspaper clipping. The paper had yellowed around the edges. He slid it across the table. There was a picture of a crushed silver sedan. The headline read, "Local woman pulls student from burning vehicle." My eyes dropped to the first paragraph. I only needed to read one sentence. "Emily Carter, 29, stopped her vehicle moments before flames spread through the engine compartment." I looked up so fast the paper almost slipped off the table. "That's my wife." "I know." I read the article again. Then a third time. It described how another driver had called emergency services. Emily had climbed into the passenger side because the driver's door was crushed. She'd unbuckled the girl, dragged her several feet away from the car. Less than a minute later, the engine caught fire. I couldn't believe what I was reading. We'd been married for 12 years. She had never mentioned any of this. Not once. "I don't understand." I looked back at Richard. "Why would she hide something like this?" He smiled sadly. "Because she doesn't think she did anything special." I laughed in disbelief. "She pulled someone out of a wreck." "I know. I've told her that. So has my daughter. So have the paramedics. So has every person who knows the story." He paused. "Emily always says the same thing." "What?" Anyone would have stopped. I shook my head. "No. Not everyone would." Richard didn't answer. Instead, he took a slow sip of his coffee. "My daughter wanted to meet Emily again after she recovered. Emily refused. Why? She said. He smiled. That surviving was enough. Something still wasn't adding up. If that's true, what did you mean yesterday? He looked genuinely embarrassed. I chose my words badly. You think? I do. I've spent years wanting to thank the man who supported the woman who saved my daughter's life. He looked me straight in the eyes. I meant, thank you for letting your wife give so much of herself to other people. I shortened it. And it came out. He shook his head. Thought completely wrong. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But there was still one thing I couldn't ignore. The text message. His eyebrows pulled together. What text message? I told him about the message I'd seen on Emily's phone. He spoke to your husband today. Richard's expression changed immediately. He slowly leaned back in his seat, then quietly said, I didn't send that. The waitress walked over with the check. Neither of us looked at it. Because if Richard wasn't the one who sent that message, then who had? I didn't say much on the drive home. The radio was on. I don't remember a single song. All I could think about was one question. Why had Emily never told me? Not about the newspaper. Not about the girl. Not about any of it. We'd been married for 12 years. How do you leave something like that out? Emily was sitting on the back porch when I got home. A cup of tea sat untouched beside her. She looked up as I walked outside. You met him? It wasn't a question. I nodded. I did. She looked toward the yard. I figured you would. I sat down beside her. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, I asked, why didn't you tell me? She smiled. Not because she was happy, because she'd known that question was coming. I was wondering how long it'd take. I read the article. She closed her eyes for a second. They never should have written that. Emily, you pulled someone out of a burning car. It wasn't burning yet. It caught fire a minute later. She shrugged. I didn't know that at the time. I couldn't believe how casually she said it. You could have died. So could she. I looked at her. I don't understand you. She laughed quietly. I know. No. I mean it. You never told me. You never told your parents. You never told Noah. Why? She rested her elbows on her knees. Because that's not the story I wanted people to remember. What story? Mine. She stared out at the backyard. You know what everyone asked me after that? I shook my head. Were you scared? How did it feel? Did people call you a hero? She smiled without looking at me. No one asked about the girl. She picked up her tea, took a sip, then continued. After a few months, I realized every conversation became about me. Every family dinner, every work event, every time someone new found out. She looked down into the cup. I hated it. So I stopped talking about it. Just like that? She nodded. I changed jobs a year later. People forgot. I liked that. What about Richard? He came to the hospital a few days after his daughter woke up. I met him for maybe 5 minutes. He cried. He hugged me. He tried to give me money. I said no. What happened after that? Nothing. I honestly thought I'd never see him again. I thought back to the message on her phone. He spoke to your husband today. If Richard didn't send it, who did? Emily looked confused. What message? I showed her my phone. I'd typed it into my notes before it disappeared. She read it twice, then started laughing. Actually laughing. What? Give me my phone. She unlocked it, opened another conversation, then handed it to me. The contact wasn't Richard. It was Claire, her coworker. The full conversation read, Claire, Richard spoke to your husband today. Emily, seriously? Claire, he recognized him at the grocery store. Emily, oh no. I looked up. Claire knows Richard? Emily nodded. They volunteer together at the rehabilitation center. Richard mentioned meeting you yesterday, so she warned me before I got home. For the first time in 2 days. Everything actually made sense. No affair. No secret life. No hidden relationship. Just a badly worded sentence from a man who'd carried gratitude around for almost a decade. A week later, Richard invited us to dinner. At first, I didn't want to go. Emily almost declined too. But eventually we did. That's where I finally met his daughter. Her name was Sophie. She walked with a slight limp. The doctors had told her she'd never run again. She smiled when she saw Emily. Not the polite smile people give strangers. The smile someone saves for a person they'll never be able to repay. She hugged Emily. Then looked at me. "You must be Mark." I nodded. She smiled. "I've wanted to meet you for years." I laughed. "Apparently everyone has except me." She laughed too. Then she said something I'll probably remember for the rest of my life. "You know, my dad thanked the wrong person." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked at Emily. Then back at me. "He always says she saved my life." She shook her head. "He forgets. Someone had to support the person who carried that memory home." I looked at Emily. She'd never told me she had nightmares after the crash. She'd never told me she avoided that road for almost a year. She'd never told me loud crashes made her freeze. She'd carried all of it by herself. Not because she didn't trust me. Because she never wanted the hardest day of someone else's life to become the biggest story of ours. On the drive home, I finally understood why she'd kept it quiet all these years. It wasn't shame. It wasn't guilt. She simply believed that if someone survives because you helped them, the ending belongs to them, not to you. And for the first time since we'd met, I realized there were parts of the woman I loved that were quiet, not because she was hiding them, but because she never needed applause for doing the right thing.